In a small veterinary clinic, what began as a routine delivery quickly spiraled into something no one could have imagined. A loyal German Shepherd gave birth to not one, not two, but 15 tiny puppies. The staff cheered, the mother panted proudly, and everything seemed normal, until the vet leaned closer. His smile faded. His hands began to tremble. Something about these newborns wasn't right. They were small, wriggling, and alive, but their features told a different story. These weren't ordinary puppies at all. The discovery left everyone in shock, forcing the vet to make a decision that would change the fate of the mother and her litter forever. What he uncovered next stunned the entire town. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The night was unusually quiet inside the small veterinary clinic. Outside, the faint hum of passing cars echoed against the wet pavement, but within those walls, anticipation hung in the air. A large German Shepherd lay on the examination table, her sides heaving, eyes glazed with exhaustion. She had been in labor for hours, and the staff moved around her with urgency yet careful gentleness. The room was warm, bright, and filled with the soft beeping of monitors. Everyone knew this was no ordinary night. She was about to give birth. Dr. Harris, the attending veterinarian, wiped his brow, his gloves already stained from assisting her through the first contractions. "Steady, girl. You're doing great," he murmured softly, his voice steady but filled with quiet excitement. Moments later, the first tiny body emerged, slick and fragile, letting out a faint whimper. A nurse quickly wrapped the newborn in a towel, gently rubbing it until a stronger cry filled the room. Relief washed over the staff. It was a healthy pup, but then came another. And another. The team exchanged glances as the number of puppies continued to climb. 5, 10. Each one wriggling, each one alive. The German Shepherd panted heavily, her eyes wide with exhaustion yet determination, as if she knew her work wasn't done. By the time the count reached 15, the room buzzed with disbelief. It was rare, almost unheard of, for a dog to deliver so many in a single litter. The clinic staff couldn't help but smile, whispering to one another about the miracle they were witnessing. 15. Can you believe it? One nurse whispered, shaking her head in awe. The owner of the dog, a middle-aged man with trembling hands, stood nearby, tears brimming in his eyes. "She's incredible," he whispered, voice breaking. "Absolutely incredible." Dr. Harris gave a nod, though his brow furrowed slightly. At first glance, everything seemed normal. 15 puppies, all alive, all seemingly well. Yet, as he leaned closer to examine them, a strange unease stirred in his chest. Something about these newborns felt different. He didn't say a word, not yet. For now, the room celebrated, unaware of what was to come. The initial joy of the delivery lingered in the air as the puppies were carefully placed on soft blankets, their tiny bodies squirming and squeaking. Nurses moved with practiced hands, gently cleaning each newborn before sliding them closer to their exhausted mother. The German Shepherd, still panting, lowered her head and nudged her babies lovingly, her eyes heavy yet proud. For a moment, it felt like nothing could shatter the warmth in the room. But as Dr. Harris leaned in for a routine check, his smile began to fade. He picked up one of the puppies, holding it under the light. Its body was small, fragile, but something about the paws made him pause. They seemed oddly shaped, longer, sharper, almost feline in their delicacy. He blinked, dismissing the thought. Newborn pups often looked awkward. Perhaps it was just the stress of birth. Minutes later, as another nurse rubbed down a second puppy, she frowned. "Doctor, look at the markings on this one," she whispered. The pup's fur, still damp, revealed faint streaks that didn't resemble the usual pattern of a German Shepherd. Instead, they looked wild, almost striped. Harris glanced at it, his chest tightening slightly. He forced a smile for the owner's sake. "Unusual markings, that's all." "Nothing to worry about," he said softly, but inside he wasn't convinced. One by one, the newborns were placed in a cluster beside their mother. As they wriggled and nestled closer, the differences became harder to ignore. Some had abnormally long tails, others had ears shaped differently, and a few let out cries that sounded sharper, higher pitched than any dog Harris had ever delivered. The owner, oblivious, chuckled nervously. "Biggest family I've ever seen," he said, trying to mask his emotions with humor. The staff smiled faintly, but unease rippled through the room. The German Shepherd licked her pups protectively, as if daring anyone to question them. Dr. Harris swallowed hard. His instincts told him this was no ordinary litter. Something about these puppies didn't feel right, and deep down, he knew he couldn't keep ignoring it for long. Dr. Harris tried to steady his breathing as he crouched beside the cluster of newborns. Their tiny bodies writhed against one another, soft whimpers filling the room. At a glance, anyone would call them puppies, but the more he studied them, the more his stomach twisted. Their paws seemed too slender, their claws sharper, their movements oddly precise for creatures just minutes old. He forced himself to look away, but the unease clung to him like a shadow. One of the nurses, a young woman with sharp eyes, leaned in close. "Doctor, is it just me, or do their cries sound strange?" she whispered. Harris tilted his head, listening. The sounds were high-pitched, almost like a mix between a mule and a squeak, not the weak yelps he expected from dogs. His lips pressed into a thin line. "Keep monitoring them," he said quickly, masking the tension in his voice. He couldn't let panic spread, not yet. He lifted another pup gently, turning it in his gloved hands. Its eyes remained sealed, but the faint ridge along its nose caught his attention. He froze. It didn't look like the nose of a German shepherd. He checked another, different again, yet equally strange. His pulse quickened as possibilities raced through his mind. Mutations? Crossbreeding? Or something far more unnatural? The owner stepped forward, his voice laced with pride and relief. "They're beautiful, aren't they, Doc?" His trembling hands reached out as if to touch one, but Harris subtly shifted to block him. He forced a smile, careful not to reveal his doubt. "Yes," he replied softly, "they're unique," but the word sat heavy on his tongue. Unique wasn't the right word, it was alarming. Harris knew he needed answers, but how could he explain this without terrifying the owner? He glanced at the mother dog, who watched with wary eyes, her body tense as though she sensed his hesitation. Inside, Harris's instincts screamed louder with every passing second. Something wasn't right, and soon everyone would know it. The room grew tense, the air heavy with unspoken questions. As Dr. Harris bent forward to examine another pup, the German shepherd suddenly lifted her head. Her ears shot up, her dark eyes locking on his every move. A low, guttural growl rumbled from her chest, a warning that froze everyone in place. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances. They had seen protective mothers before, but this was different. The dog's body stiffened, her lips pulling back slightly over her teeth as if daring anyone to touch her young. She shifted her weight, spreading her front legs protectively around the wriggling pile of newborns. The puppies squirmed against her fur, seeking warmth, completely unaware of the storm brewing around them. "Easy, girl," Harris whispered, raising his hand slightly. He had delivered countless litters before, but the intensity in her gaze unsettled him. It wasn't just maternal instinct. It was almost as if she knew something was wrong, something he hadn't yet admitted aloud. The owner stepped closer, attempting to calm her. "Bella, it's okay. They're just helping," he soothed. But Bella's growl deepened, her eyes never leaving the vet's hands. Her chest heaved with protective fury, her tail curled tightly around her strange litter. One of the nurses whispered nervously, "Doctor, maybe we should give her space." Harris hesitated, then slowly lowered the pup he had been holding back onto the blanket. Instantly, Bella's growling softened, though her eyes remained sharp, untrusting. She licked the puppy's damp fur, pulling it closer, as if reclaiming what was hers. Harris leaned back, unease prickling his skin. Protective mothers were common, yes, but this was different. It felt calculated, deliberate, almost as though Bella was guarding a secret, one even he wasn't supposed to uncover. The clinic fell silent except for the soft squeaks of the pups and the steady, warning rumble from their mother. Harris exhaled slowly. He had seen many things in his years as a vet, but never had he felt so certain that something beyond explanation was unfolding before him. And Bella, with every growl and glare, was making sure no one interfered. The silence in the clinic was broken only by the faint whimpers of the newborns. Dr. Harris sat back for a moment, his eyes darting from the mother to her litter. Something deep inside told him he could not ignore the signs any longer. With a steadying breath, he leaned forward once more, determined to take a closer look even if Bella resisted. "Hold her gently," he instructed one of the nurses. The assistant hesitated, then slowly placed a calming hand near Bella's shoulders. The German shepherd growled low but did not attack, her eyes blazing with warning. Harris carefully reached for one of the smallest pups, lifting it into his hands with deliberate care. Under the bright examination light, his stomach tightened. The newborn's body trembled, its fur patchy, but it wasn't the fragile state that unsettled him. It was its face. The snout was shorter, the jaw oddly shaped, and the faint ridge along its brow gave it an appearance he had never seen in any dog before. Its tiny paws flexed, revealing claws that seemed sharper, more curved, almost predatory in design. Harris's heart pounded. "This isn't right," he muttered under his breath. The nurse leaned closer, her face paling as she saw it too. "Doctor, what is that?" He didn't answer. Instead, he gently checked another pup. This one bore faint stripes running across its back, its ears pointed unnaturally high. A third had an elongated tail, too long for a normal dog. Every pup he examined seemed to carry a fragment of something unfamiliar, something that didn't belong to any breed he knew. The owner finally noticed the shift in the room. His voice cracked with worry. "What's wrong with them? Why do you all look like that?" Harris exhaled slowly, placing the strange pup back beside its mother. The German Shepherd pulled it close with a protective lick, her growl softening as if daring him to speak the truth. He looked around the room, his voice barely above a whisper. "These aren't ordinary puppies." The words hung in the air like a blade, sharp, heavy, and impossible to ignore. "These aren't ordinary puppies." For a moment, no one moved. The owner's face drained of color, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. The nurses exchanged frightened glances, their hands frozen in mid-task. Even the faint whimpers of the pups seemed eerie, as though they too sensed the tension that had swallowed the room. "What do you mean?" the owner demanded, his voice trembling. "They're just dogs." "They have to be." His tone cracked between fear and denial. He stepped forward, but Bella immediately bared her teeth, her growl reverberating against the walls, forcing him to stop in his tracks. The protective mother wasn't allowing anyone near her strange litter now. One nurse whispered nervously, "Doctor, should we call animal control? Or the authorities?" Her words sent a ripple of unease across the staff. Animal control? Authorities? The implications of that thought made everyone's stomach churn. These weren't dangerous predators, not yet. They were fragile newborns. But the question remained, what were they? Dr. Harris tried to maintain control of the room. "No one touches them without my instruction," he said firmly, though his own voice wavered with unease. He could feel the fear building among his team. Their unease threatened to boil over into full-blown panic, and that was the last thing he needed. Bella's eyes darted around the room, her body curled tightly around her pups. Her growls came in short bursts, her breath shallow, her every muscle tense as though she sensed their fear. The newborns squeaked and writhed, their movements more restless than before. The owner clutched his head. "What's happening here?" he whispered, his knees buckling as if the weight of the truth was too much to bear. Harris looked at the litter again, his chest tightening. The room that had moments ago celebrated life now brimmed with dread. Panic simmered just below the surface, waiting to explode, and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone demanded answers he wasn't sure he had. Dr. Harris stood frozen, the weight of the room pressing down on him. The owner's panicked whispers, the nurse's anxious murmurs, Bella's low growls, it all swirled into a storm of tension. He had seen rare cases, genetic oddities, even malformed litters, but never anything like this. And the terrifying part was not knowing whether to treat it as a medical mystery or something far more sinister. He pressed a hand against his mask, steadying his breathing. If he spoke too soon, he could terrify everyone. If he stayed silent, he risked ignoring something that might threaten not only the mother dog, but everyone who came near these newborns. His training as a veterinarian screamed for answers, but his instincts as a human told him this was bigger than medicine. One nurse finally broke the silence. "Doctor, what should we do?" Her voice cracked with fear. All eyes turned to him, waiting for guidance. Harris swallowed hard. He wanted to say run more tests, but his gut twisted. What if these creatures weren't simply dogs with defects? What if they were hybrids, experiments? The thought chilled him, though he dared not say it aloud. The owner's voice rose sharply. "Tell me the truth, Harris. Are they sick? Are they dangerous?" His words echoed through the sterile room. Bella snarled at the noise, her teeth flashing, daring anyone to come closer. Harris looked at the mother. Despite everything, she was calm toward her pups, licking, nudging, nursing as though nothing was wrong. Whatever they were, she didn't see monsters. She saw her children. That image struck him harder than anything else. His chest tightened. He was standing at a crossroads. Should he alert the authorities, risking the pups being taken away, possibly destroyed, or should he protect them, study them quietly, and find the truth on his own? The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a stone. For the first time in his career, Dr. Harris wasn't sure what the right choice was. But he knew one thing. Whatever path he chose would change everything. The clinic lights hummed softly as the hours dragged on. Dr. Harris had finally ordered a series of urgent tests. Blood work, genetic samples, even x-rays. Each step was taken quietly, carefully, while Bella was kept calm with gentle words and soft touches. The owner sat nervously in the waiting room, his leg bouncing restlessly, his face pale from exhaustion and fear. Inside the lab, Harris studied the results as they trickled in. At first, he hoped the abnormalities were just natural mutations, something explainable, something harmless. But as the data stacked against his wishes, his heart sank deeper. The red blood cells carried markers unlike any he had seen in domestic dogs. The skeletal images showed elongated bones, sharper joints, even faint indications of predatory features not found in canines. His hands trembled as he flipped through the charts. One of the nurses leaned over his shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. "Doctor, this doesn't look normal." Harris nodded grimly, his lips pressed tight. "It's not," he admitted. The final blow came when the genetic analysis flashed across the screen. Harris froze. His eyes scanned the sequence once, then again, disbelief carving lines into his face. The DNA wasn't purely canine, it was mixed. Somewhere in that tangled code, there were traces of something wild, something that didn't belong in a domestic animal at all. He ripped off his gloves, running a hand over his face. "This isn't possible," he muttered. But the evidence was clear. These weren't just puppies. They were hybrids. The door creaked open and the anxious owner stepped inside. "Tell me," he demanded. "What's wrong with them?" Harris looked at Bella, who lay peacefully nursing her strange brood, her tail wagging faintly with maternal pride. His chest ached. How could he tell this man the truth? That his beloved dog had given birth to creatures no one had ever seen before? Finally, he met the owner's eyes, his voice low, trembling with the weight of revelation. "They're alive. But they're not dogs, at least, not entirely." The owner staggered back, his face pale as Harris's words echoed in his ears. "Not dogs, not entirely." His lips trembled as he stared at the wriggling litter on the blanket. That's impossible," he whispered, shaking his head violently. "Bella's a purebred. She's loyal, gentle. She's never even left my sight."
"How could this happen?"
His voice cracked somewhere between anger and desperation. The nurses avoided his gaze, their own faces etched with unease. Whispers floated around the room, questions no one dared say out loud. Were these pups dangerous? Should they even survive? One nurse muttered nervously, Maybe they should be taken away." The words hung heavy in the air, slicing through the fragile silence. Bella lifted her head instantly, her ears twitching, her eyes burning with warning. She pulled her litter tighter against her body, licking them with slow, deliberate strokes. Her growl was softer this time, but more heartbreaking, like a mother pleading for the right to keep her children safe. Harris felt the weight of that sound pierce his chest. No matter what the tests said, no matter what the charts revealed, Bella didn't see monsters. She saw only her babies. He clenched his fists, torn between the science screaming in his mind and the bond of love unfolding right before his eyes. The owner dropped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "What am I supposed to do?" he whispered, his voice breaking. He glanced at Bella, then at Harris. "If people find out, they'll take them. They'll take her too. She doesn't deserve that." Tears slipped down his cheeks as Bella looked at him, almost as if she understood his pain. For the first time that night, Dr. Harris let himself breathe slowly, forcing the panic from his thoughts. "They're alive," he said gently. "They're hers, and right now what they need most is her love." His voice softened as he looked at Bella, who continued to cradle her strange pups as though they were treasures. It didn't matter what the tests revealed. To Bella, they weren't experiments or mistakes. They were family. The clinic had fallen quiet, the earlier panic giving way to an uneasy calm. The tests, the questions, the fear, It all still lingered like smoke after a fire. But in the center of it all lay Bella, her body curled around her newborns, her breathing steady now, her eyes soft with a love that asked no questions. Whatever the world saw, to her they were perfect. Dr. Harris sat across the room, the weight of the night heavy on his shoulders. Science demanded answers, demanded further study, but his heart knew something science often forgot. Life itself was a mystery, and sometimes it didn't need explaining. Watching Bella nudge her strange little ones closer, watching them wriggle and nestle into her warmth, he realized there was no force greater than a mother's bond. The owner wiped his eyes, his fear slowly melting into awe. "She doesn't care what they are," he whispered almost to himself. "She just loves them." His voice cracked, but this time with tenderness, not panic. He reached out a trembling hand toward Bella. To his relief, she didn't growl. Instead, she allowed his touch as if she too trusted him to understand. Harris finally spoke, his tone softer than it had been all night. "Perhaps that's what we need to remember. They may not fit into the rules we know, but they're alive and they're hers. That's enough." His words carried not just to the owner but to the staff, easing the tension that had held them hostage. The newborns squeaked softly, tiny voices breaking the silence like fragile bells. Bella rested her head across them, her eyes closing in contentment. The room, once filled with dread, now felt oddly sacred, as if they were witnessing not a mistake of nature, but a miracle no one yet understood. And as dawn's first light broke through the clinic windows, it carried with it a message stronger than fear. That love doesn't question, doesn't judge, and doesn't turn away. Sometimes the most extraordinary stories are not about what we understand, but about what we choose to protect.